end my day at like 4, so it's actually not too bad.
It's 12 hours. Respect.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
It works out.
So it's 4 p.m. I think we can kick off today's session. So first of all, it's great to have you guys here with us. I can see people are already joining in. And we're very excited because this is actually our first collaboration between SaaStock Local London and SaaStock Local Munich. So we are very excited to have Nick here as well. Nick, how's it going?
Good. The sun is out in London. It's like that makes everyone happier. So yeah, we're good. Really excited to do this session today, partnering with Munich as well. So yeah, thanks for fixing this up.
So today we have an exciting topic and also exciting speakers. So just two basic things up front. Guys, we're going to record today's session, so you can check it out at a later point in time as well. And second, you can find the chat room on the website, so feel free to drop any questions in there, and we're going to answer them as soon as possible. So I would say, Mario, what are we going to talk about today?
Yeah, and hi guys, Mario, and I hope I can work the slides somehow. Here we go. You should see slide 2, correct. So what are we talking about today? We see that subscription businesses and the subscription industry is pretty resilient to the shocks in 2020 and beyond. More and more businesses and people favor access to goods over the goods itself and the ownership. So what we do today is we look ahead to what big trends businesses of all kinds have in store in 2021 and beyond. And 2021 proves to be a year of consolidation, if you will, and transformation. So the same is expected for the years to come. Competition increases, lowering the cost of entry and maximizing use, while increasing the long-term value of customers will be key to successful monetization still. So the graph here on the right-hand side speaks for itself. It's Netflix revenue over the last quarters and years. So for today, we propose the topics on the left-hand side that you can see here. But please feel free, as Oscar said, to chime in, ask any question, influence the speakers in the chat, and we want to discuss the following trends, specific offerings per geo, for example, as you can see here, personalization, open banking, pay as you go, real-time versus real-time billing versus flexible billing and new payment capabilities, the combination of recurring business and maybe physical goods or one-time payments, the use of data that helps you to improve your business, to learn what your business is doing and what your customers require. Everything as a service is here, is a nice new topic coming up. Payment gateways, payment gateway performance, artificial intelligence and machine learning, workflows, operations. So that's all topics for today. Let's give it, hand the word over to the speakers today, Stephen and Eric. And please, Nick will moderate the event today. Stephen, Eric, please introduce yourself and please mention how many subscriptions you have or you feel to have. How many do you really use? And yeah, just we're excited about this. Welcome.
Go ahead, Steve. I'll let you go first.
Thank you very much. I was just about to say the same thing. Eric and I are used to this. We've been on a few webinars so far, so he's going to be bored of my spiel. But I'm Stephen Reedy. I've been with GoCardless about 2.5 years now. Prior to that, I was a couple of years with Google, a few years with Cisco. So first step into scale up and current responsibility is looking after Northern Europe. So general manager for Northern Europe. And yeah, very much looking forward to the conversation today.
Great. I'm Eric Chan, head of partnerships at Chargebee. So I oversee our payment relationships with partners such as GoCardless, also tech partnerships such as HubSpot and NetSuite. Excited to talk about subscriptions, obviously, because that's what we do as a business. You asked about how many subscriptions, probably too many. Although I would argue with you, subscriptions also have different terms. Sometimes they're called prescription medication. Sometimes they're called your utility bill, your cable or your internet bill. So there's many different forms, maybe even a gym membership. And those are the types of businesses that, between Steve and I, we support when it comes to kind of recurring payment and recurring businesses. So we'll start there.
Great. Thanks, guys. Hi, everyone. Welcome from wherever you're dialing in from or tuning in from. As Mario and Oscar said, this is a joint event with London and Munich. We're really happy to have these guys here from brands I'm sure you already know about. I'm going to ask them a couple of introductory questions in just a minute to kind of kick us off. But I'll do a quick intro for myself. In the meantime, in the chat, would you mind giving us a quick message as to where you are right now? Like what city, what country, where are you right now? That'd be great, and we can give you a shout out and see some of those responses. If you haven't met me before at one of these events, my name is Nick Duns. I am the chapter leader for SaaStock London, and I will tell you about an event that we've got coming up at the end of this particular one. I'm going to be moderating this discussion today. These guys are going to chat the pants off all of us, so I'll see if we can squeeze some questions in because they've got so much good content. But do throw in some questions as well. I'm experienced in the payment space, so I work for a company called Shuttle, and we provide a payments technology platform connecting SaaS payments. And so, yeah, very much interested in the future of the payments market and how SaaS can leverage that stuff. So I'll try and use some of my inherent knowledge to ask some discussion questions too. Cool. So we have got Michael from Amsterdam, Jessica, Berlin, Germany, Nihal from India, Chennai. Cool. Holger, Germany, Pavan, India, Jack from Belgium, and Dinesh from Chennai, India as well. Cool. Look, guys, feel free to just throw your questions in. What would you like to hear about? How should we steer this discussion today? And if you want to throw anything else, any comments around your experience, that would be great too. But just by way of the second introduction, Eric, Stephen, what is your relationship, you two? How do you work together? What do you do? Just to clarify.
So I guess the TLDR version is we send the bills and Steve collects the money.
100%.
All right.
We're the plumbers.
That's right.
Cool. Great. Well, that was way more succinct than I was expecting. But that is
We can give you the long version if you want.
That's right.
That's great. Go ahead, Eric. What were you going to say?
No, I was going to say, yeah, we could give you the long version, but we could keep moving through a lot of the topics that were listed on that page. So
yeah, absolutely. So and the kind of the title for today, is the future of subscriptions, and so you guys are thinking about that all the time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, just as a way to kick us off for discussion, what are the key things that you guys are seeing in terms of, from your perspective, the next opportunities in the subscription space? Like, what is key? What's on your mind right now? What are you thinking that's where we need to go to? That's what we need to do next.
So I'll make a pretty bold prediction that the good news about subscription is that we already inherently understand what it is, right? So when you're growing up, you had the magazine or newspaper subscription. Like I mentioned earlier, you paid for your utility bill. So from the business model perspective, we're very accustomed to it. Where I think it's going is that we'd like, obviously, every business to be a subscription or figure out how they can turn their business model into that, right? And the proof point is that if we look at our customer base, I'm sure Steve has the same, it's starting to broaden, right? So when we first started out, it was mostly SaaS companies, media companies trying to provide streaming services online. Today, we're looking at much more product-focused companies, physical product companies, offering hard goods or things that are being, directly delivered to your doorstep. And that's increasing, right? Now we're seeing retail and hospitality offering subscriptions, transportation companies. So we're really noticing that it's broadening, and there's starting to be logos that everyone here, would recognize.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Stephen.
Yeah, I think I'll answer it in a slightly different way. I know we're using the term subscription, but we've kind of coined the term recurring. So a recurring payment, and the fact that a lot of these, as Eric said, a lot of these businesses are exploring recurring payment models. And I was only interested this morning reading an article, and someone pointed out that when you go to dinner now, that industry is essentially flipped on its head, right? We used to order from a menu, then we'd ask for the bill. Now we pay for the food before we receive it. So that entity in that restaurant is developing a relationship with you, in that every time you go back, you're using that same app to use the same checkout facility to pay for your food before it arrives. So there's just simple nuances in every single industry where we're actually flipping to this recurring relationship underpinned by a payment relationship. And the one I was boring you guys with yesterday is Bridgestone. This is the one that blew my mind. We had a chat with Bridgestone 2 years ago, and they're calling us going, how in God's name are we, a recurring payment company, going to service a tire manufacturer? But they've pivoted their entire service offering to essentially a winter summer tires subscription model. So you have your winter tires, you pay £10 a month, you flip to your summer tires and they store them for you. So again, these are the traditional industries that are embracing this recurring or subscription model, and we could talk about them for days, but I give you those two anecdotes because for all of the people on the call, if you are thinking about this and you are trying to identify, well, how is this relevant for our business? I think Eric and I would firmly believe it is, and we're happy to kind of explore it with you.
That's great. And I think, that's cool to frame it up as recurring as well. And that helps you access some of those, more traditional type businesses that are out there, right? And actually it helps probably a lot of the people in this group think about, what disruptive technologies can they actually now put on top of that? Maybe you've got an Internet of Things device on your tire somehow, measuring the tread. Like, when's the right time to, get those new tires? I don't know, but you're paying on a subscription basis. So I don't know if you've got any more examples of some innovative stuff that you're seeing or disruptive stuff going into those more traditional markets. But if you don't, I'd love to press you a question about, what's happening in different places around the world, whether that's very local or on a broader geographical basis. I'd love to hear a little bit about that, because I know you both have something to say.
Yeah, I can give you one. Sorry, Eric.
No, please. Go.
Well, I was just going to do the other interesting one, just food for thought, is Airbus, right? And Boeing, manufacture engines, manufacture planes. They're taking the components of their wings, navigation systems built into planes. They're actually turning them in to a recurring model, i.e. how much of that navigation tool have you consumed over the last month? They're modularizing what was traditionally a capital expense. So you go from tire manufacturing to plane manufacturing. If they can come up with a recurring payment mechanism, I think everywhere in between can. But also it's not just if you do have a capital expense, if it is a one-off, I imagine you're exploring, well, is there a service related to it? Can I build a relationship with that customer even though they buy the TV once off? Can I service it? Can I add layers of functionality on? So there are different angles to that. And then obviously COVID happened when 18 months ago, 2 years ago now, is it? I'm losing track of time. It's kind of Stockholm syndrome, but I guess it flipped a lot of industries in how they approach their business models. And we saw some really interesting spikes in pet subscription, food subscription, medication. So again, not to sound opportunist, I think it's more businesses have identified that the way people want to now consume and they want to pay for goods is on this recurring model. So there's a couple of different factors in there, but Nick, I'll let you dictate which way we go with it.
No, I'm interested in, pets for rental, if that's what you mean. You can. I'd love to get a subscription dog and take you back. That's not what you mean. Eric, you're going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to also think about it from this perspective too. Says Steve gave these two examples of a tire company and an airplane manufacturer. I think what it also fundamentally changes is your relationship with your customer, right? So if you're Airbus, you sell the plane to an airline, and obviously you'll provide support and you'll provide some maintenance. But now doing it based on a consumption-based approach, the time, frequency, and engagement or involvement from Airbus to that airline company actually becomes a lot more intense, right? Because as they're consuming the navigation system monthly, you actually need to tell yourself, well, hey, maybe actually every month or every quarter, I actually need to talk to them rather than once a year or when something comes up. And so you're actually now changing how you're engaging with your customer because it's all about retention rather than just purely acquisition, right? You want to keep them for, 1, 2, 5, 10 years if possible. So that actually now creates this new structure where customer success, if that's not a function before, has a vastly more important role than just purely sales and marketing. Finance and operations also becomes a factor because, as Steve and I also talk about, you want to make the billing and the payment part almost frictionless, right? I mean, how many times do you, in the past, you've seen the bill be slightly off because something happened, and then you had to spend the time to go talk to someone in customer service at that company to fix your bill, right? That part should be completely eliminated. But it also means that finance and operations really need to have that, consistency, have that reliability so that it's effortless just to pay it, right? And your focus really more is on how do I keep them coming back for more? How do I delight the customer maybe by giving them some enhancements, that surprises them. So going back to the pet food subscription, there's some companies where every month or every couple of months, they'll just throw in a little, dog treat or some kind of doggy toy just to keep, you delighted that they're thinking about you, but obviously they're also taking care of your pet because, sometimes you always think about what kind of next thing I could give the pet to keep them entertained. So these are kind of some things that has to have a shift in the business in order to really fully embrace this subscription or recurring model.
Yeah, great. Is there any themes that your customers or prospective customers are coming to you and asking for that it might be new feature set around the product or some other element of the service that is actually going to serve them as the future of subscriptions? What are you guys seeing in terms of some of those features and requirements that are coming from your customers?
Yeah, I guess as a starter for 6, I think, as we progress through the logic of leveraging subscription or recurring payment, you've found a service, you've launched that subscription, you have a customer base. Where Eric and I tend to then geek out is, well, what payment method are you leveraging, right? And to give you some example, there's some major streaming services across the globe who you can all, I imagine, will have a subscription with. But a good month for these services is when their failure rate is about 9%. Their average failure rate is between 12 and 15%. Now, just as a starter, if you're launching a recurring subscription and every single month 12% of your base are failing, their payment is failing, or you're failing to collect that money, that's a massive bottleneck. And I guess where we kind of come into it is we're developing platforms that are embedding some smarts, whether that's machine learning, whether that's data and insights, whether it's just manual process where instead of collecting on the 1st of the month, collect on the 25th because we can back it up with some data. So to answer your question, Nick, customers are coming to us going, all right, I'm in, I get it, I want to transition, but now I've launched and I'm experiencing a lot of pain. Where can you help me? How can you add some value?
Yeah.
That's where we're leveraging a lot of the data, a lot of the case studies, vertical specific examples, whether it's energy retrying payments, whether it's launching on a B2B and converting invoice to direct debit, whatever it may be. So that's where we're kind of adding our value, is bringing in that experience, because we have 60,000 plus clients on our platform now. So we have a lot of data on that payment mechanism. But I'd say failure is kind of top of mind for a lot of CFO, CMO, CRO.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. For us, I think it's how do you optimize the revenue curve for your growing base of subscribers, right? So what I mean by that is, everyone knows the sort of tried and true 3-tiered model that Netflix offers. Going back to your streaming example, Steve, what would happen if Netflix experimented with a consumption-based pricing approach, right? So that they can maximize all of the power users who are incessantly just streaming all day long, and the folks that actually don't use it that much, they're only paying actually less than the base plan. But it's a way for either A, a retention strategy, or B, shaping that curve so you're maximizing the profit, right? So if you think about transforming the 3-tiered pricing model to then now a usage-based model, how can you then extract more and more, obviously, revenue, but also data as a way to shape how you're going to build new features, where are people using certain things, what are the requests for things that haven't been created yet. Then if we go past that, then you're starting to optimize, as Steve had said, when do you want to collect a payment, right? So collecting that information about, hey, the 1st isn't a good day, there's a high risk that everybody's asking for it on the same day. Why not ask for it on the 5th or the 10th? You're still going to get the revenue, but your chances of 100% collection goes way up. Then if we kind of go, to the future, if you have a customer that has been with you for, let's say, 6 to 12 months, are you willing even to take some risk by actually giving them credit on something that they paid for, even if the payment failed, or you just want to know that it's going to come in and provide a service there because, well, they're very reliable. So you're willing to actually give them some additional credits or risk to sort of keep them around, but also manage the payment flow.
Yeah, cool. So I got a question from the audience here. So from Jacques, perhaps this is directed towards Stephen, but it's off the back of the failure rates. So Jacques says, where do these streaming services failure rates originate from? Or I guess failure rates in general, where are they, where are they coming from? What is failure?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we think about failures in 3 buckets, and we always encourage a client to look at it in 3 kind of buckets, which is willing and able. So I'm willing to pay this and I'm able to pay it. I'm a good payer. So I'm in the 90%. I want to keep this streaming service running. Willing and unable. So I have gone into my overdraft. I've booked that holiday because I couldn't travel for 18 months. I've stacked my subscriptions on the 1st of the month. I want to be a Netflix consumer. I just happen to have overdrawn, or like me, you've misplaced a credit card every 3 months and you haven't updated it online. So willing and unable. And then you have unwilling and unable, right? And I think where it gets smart is being able to discern between those 3 categories and actually leverage engagement mechanisms based on that categorization. So Nick, if you have lost a credit card and you haven't updated it and your payment fails, do I really want to send someone to call you? Do I want to hound you on the phone? Do I want to generate a negative relationship between you and I? Probably not. You're a willing and unable payer, but there's a good chance that in 10 days you'll have the money in your account, you'll have gotten paid, or even next month. So I just drop you an email and say, hey, Nick, I'm going to take double payment next month. I hope you enjoy our service in between. That's a massive mind shift from credit control, where we are operationalizing around customer teams calling you, going, Nick, if you don't pay, we're going to cut off your service. It's a very confrontational approach. But the backdrop to this is technology. What's enabling this are platforms like Chargebee who can automate this, who can automate that retry mechanism and do it behind the scenes. So again, what we're actually leveraging is the technology to enable a very different customer interaction. And you actually maintain that NPS score because I'm happy, you've engaged me in a positive way, you've given me a bit of leeway. Now, if Nick continues to not pay, you're going to fall into the third category. And then we make a decision, okay, this is the 5th time it happened, cut service. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's good. Eric, do you want to add anything? But if you don't, I have something specific for you on that.
No, we can move on to the next slide. Steve covered it quite well.
Yeah, so just taking that one step further about, failures happening, that dunning process that you guys in Chargebee provide. How have you evolved that, and what do you think? Where are you moving to on that? Because, like Stephen says, that's a key engagement point and actually customer management point around that dunning process.
Yeah, so I'm a big believer if you can move the needle on the acceptance or failure rate, depending on which approach you're looking at, that really does help with your prediction on growth and also reliability. But also, if you think about when you're trying to raise money, right? Everyone wants to see the trends going up, and during the diligence aspect, if they're noticing that there's a leaky bucket problem, how bad is it, right? It's okay if you're losing £1 a month, but if you're losing £1 a day, the compounding problem kind of takes over, right? So when it comes to dunning, I think it's thinking through that, having a variety of payment instruments, because again, to Steve's point, right, are you willing to put it on credit, or do you want to have it directly debited from your bank account, or I don't know, maybe in the future your crypto account, right? It really doesn't matter. You just need to tell the merchant, hey, we will figure out a way so that you're able to collect the funds and hopefully keep that customer satisfied that the service or the product keeps being delivered to you.
Cool. Yeah, Steve, do you want to just say a little bit again, progression on that conversation? Like, you guys are obviously looking at new payment methods or new payment types with open banking. You're cool, GoCardless. What are you thinking about? What are you seeing in terms of the improvement on that collection process through what you guys are doing?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it only took us 28 minutes to mention open banking. I'm shocked. Usually it's straight out the gate.
I've been holding it off.
Yeah. I'd have bet on 30, but no, we didn't. It's a good question, right? And I guess I'll answer it in our GoCardless's opening gambit is, we want to take the pain out of getting paid so you can focus on what you do best, which is run your business. And the genesis of that statement is essentially, as a merchant, do you really care which payment mechanism we use? As long as we get that money from your customer in a streamlined mechanism and drop it into your account when you expect. And I say that because there's a future where what we're trying to build and getting quite close to is building a platform that can select the most relevant payment method based on the payment type. I'll give you an example. You're a food subscription box. You obviously want to get that box out to Nick as soon as possible. You go onto my website, you put in your details. I want to be able to verify you and take that first payment instantly. I want to be able to take it from your account because the minute I get it, I'm comfortable to send you the food box. Open banking is essentially the rails that allow me to take that money from your account straight away. The tech is getting really good. For everyone on this call, it's essentially a set of APIs that allows a merchant to pull that money from Nick's account immediately. So all of a sudden, I've gotten that first payment. I've used open banking. Then I want to put you on a recurring payment model. But open banking at the minute is quite costly. What happens if I then use direct debit or bank debit for all subsequent payments? That's a world where I'm marrying the best payment method for the best payment use case.
Right.
That's essentially how we're thinking about this. Now that's where we get quite geeky on it, and we love working through it with customers. It's a case of, it's not as simple as, I'm going to launch this and I'm going to launch on cards. Our argument would be, have a think about that. Have a think about what the use case is and how you want to interact and what kind of smarts you want to do. But yeah, without getting too far into the open banking realm, that's kind of an anecdotal example of how we're thinking about it.
Yeah, great. So Holger asks, she's interested in converting traditional licensing models to SaaS. And I think potentially there's a link there with both what you guys are doing, but also a lot of those traditional businesses will be used to bank-to-bank type payments. They won't be used to card fees either. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit from you guys about what you think the impact is on, you know, key things like financials, retention, engagement, yeah, and how you actually go about converting some of those traditional licensing models over to the subscription model.
So I'll get a little bit geeky for a second. One big topic that you have to consider moving from a traditional license to SaaS would be this concept around revenue recognition. Right? If you're just selling a license, you pay for Office or Adobe Creative Cloud one time, and you recognize the revenue, right? But the problem is you don't realize any other revenue until maybe they upgrade or buy the next version. When it comes to the SaaS model, you can choose to pay for the same set of fees so that you're paying for a 12-month subscription, right? And then you renew in a year. But the way you recognize the revenue is you can't actually attribute all of it up front. You actually have to meter it out every month you're providing the service along that contract term. So that's a pretty big shift on the financials. It's even more complicated if you then say have an IoT type model where you're buying a hardware device. You can recognize that revenue up front, but the software or service that you're providing subsequently needs to be accounted for every month. So those are some of the high level impacts. I would also say that what could be interesting in maybe the IoT or other models is the consumption-based model where you're sort of charging the base fee every month, and then on top of that, based on the usage, you can then get a little bit more money. So in some cases, that could be financially more lucrative than the licensing model. The other part that sort of at a macro level you have to think about for your business again is retention, right? You actually now really, really care about LTV, and you want your LTV to be as long as possible. Whereas in the licensing model, you didn't really care about LTV, you just cared about acquisition, right? Because once you got them to pay, that was it. Now, hopefully they come back again for the next version, next year, or the next release, but it isn't a guarantee, right? Everyone has probably an old version of Microsoft Office from 2000 or something like that they have never upgraded, and that's a bad business model because while you might be still using the product, you're not using the latest and greatest or all the new features that the company has been spending money on developing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I think there's a psychological element to this in that, when you go back to those traditional streaming services, right? Like, what did they challenge? They challenged Blockbuster, which was, I'm renting this for a fixed period of time. It was very inflexible. And even if you look at, movie rental, I don't want to buy DVDs. I don't want to own them. Am I really going to watch that another 10 times? I'm not that big a movie fan. I'll happily pay the $3.99 to watch it once. And I'm actually noticing when I talk to a lot of CFOs, and especially in that kind of digital native, cloud native, those early adopters, they've built and architected their business on a plug and play. They don't want to consume SaaS in a multi-year capital expenditure, one-off big bang cost. The words that every CRO, and I imagine Nick, you hate them, is they want to POC it. They want to test it out, right? They want to trial it. And then
You can POC anything as long as you pay me some money.
but it's actually a very successful acquisition tool, right?
Yeah.
And if you can really build your, as Eric pointed out, your customer success, your sales teams around engaging with that client, and that acquisition is on a monthly basis, it's a lot easier to get through that first hurdle of getting a client to test and acquire your application. So we've actually seen that kind of psychological shift of, okay, I can see a small use case over here, let's test it out. And then if you back yourself, you can expand out from there. So I guess those traditional licensing models, I actually think they were a massive blocker to acquisition.
Right.
And I think this flexibility is increasing the acquisition. And we've seen it at GoCardless, and I'm sure Eric will corroborate at Chargebee.
I would add one other point to think about is really think through your PLG strategy. So for those, PLG stands for product-led growth. This is the idea of, have some kind of trial or free plan, and then figure out a way to migrate them from that to hopefully a paid plan or the right level of paid tier. So that could be a really interesting, not only acquisition strategy, but conversion model, getting people to adopt your product or service. And then hopefully, if it's a B2B situation, you can start to expand within the organization, try to get an enterprise license.
Yeah, that's great. I don't know if you guys saw Nihal's question in the chat, but I think you pretty much answered it. He's acquisition different when you're optimizing for lifetime customer value, and so that gets that gets pretty interesting. I don't know if there's anything that you sorry, just someone came into my meeting room. I don't know if there's anything that you guys have seen that's innovative, aside from what you just mentioned, from your customers that they're doing in terms of that acquisition.
You think from like a tools perspective or a process perspective or a? Yeah,
I mean, it could be anything. It could be the sheer fact that the subscription model or the freemium model is allowing access to the product, but then what is actually how are you optimizing that for driving that LTV as well?
So one thing, and it sounds oversimplifying, but we're actually surprised that not more merchants are looking at this. But this is a classic problem of, take any large company that your product is being used in, and all you have to do is actually just do an export of everybody on the same domain, right? So whether it be, I don't know, barclayscard.com or, name your brand, Tesco.com, right? And then just map that against whether you can find out a department and or number of users and what plan they're associated with, right? So you probably have a bunch that are using the free plan, they're kicking the tires. You have some people who are on maybe the minimum plan, and maybe some other team, they said, hey, this is going to be critical to our business, let's sign an enterprise license, right? So what is the actual opportunity within a Tesco? It's actually pretty massive, right? If you multiply how many employees and number of departments, there's huge opportunities. But what I think some companies don't do well is if they just do that simple mapping exercise and they see how the usage is happening, then going back to hopefully the highest level person that is using the product rather than just simply going to the procurement department, getting them to understand that, hey, you know what, there's so much utility and value that you're extracting. Is there a way that actually I can help you save money by getting, more people involved, but per seat or per usage, it's actually less.
Yeah.
And then signing a bigger contract, right? So like simple land and expand concepts like that, really need to just do some simple, playing around with Excel and doing some simple filtering and mapping.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the more you expand, the more value you're going to drive over the lifetime, and certainly the harder the churn is, right?
Yeah, 100%. And again, this is such a simple answer, but we're constantly, we have a culture of introspection, right? Where we'll ask people to just go through our sign-up flow and basically like, what pipped you? What stopped you from completing? What stopped you from activating? What's an unnecessary field? How many pages are in our sign-up flow? Do we really need that 7th page? Can we capture this up front, right? So I guess these have material effects on your conversion and your acquisition. If I need to go through 8 sign-up pages, verify twice, call someone, activate a link, it's like all of this is very, very tedious. So it's that constant introspection on simplicity. Can you get that client on platform? We have a culture of get them on platform. If you back your NPS and you back your net retention at 100 or 120 and above, invariably they're not going to leave. And that's where you can have, when you say LTV, is in the first, second, or third year, you begin expanding out, you begin getting into committed agreements, you begin to really embedding that relationship. But don't try and do it all up front. Don't march in with a 3-year commit that's going to lock them into X and Y. Make it very easy. That's what Slack, Netflix, Spotify, all of them, they've absolutely nailed it. And that PLG is proof point, right? Product-led growth. Let the product do the selling.
Yeah, that's great. Eric, how have you guys done that product-led growth, product-led selling at Chargebee? I wonder if you could speak on that for a few seconds.
Well, so Steve benefits from it regardless, but we give away the processing volume on the PLG. And we made this actually big shift, right? We went from offering 50,000 in invoices processed through Chargebee to now 100,000. But you still have to use a processor. So like I said, GoCardless, they get the processing volume. And based on that, right, 50,000 or 100,000, it really doesn't matter. That's enough for you to learn the product, get things going through the system. And once you see how either easy or automated or how quickly you can set up a new plan, send notifications out, and then other features like offering a self-service tool, right? Setting up billing is much more of a administrative operational project, but you also still have to offer something to the customer. And so offering that self-service portal to, add another payment option or update their shipping address or upgrading their plan. We won't talk about canceling, but we'll talk about upgrading the plan, right? You don't want to talk to a person, like you said, Nick, you don't want to be chased after to do that. You want to on my own time, when it's convenient for me, maybe when I'm waiting for the tube versus waiting in an elevator, hey, it's simple. I can log in, change my plan, update my information, and I'm done, right? You don't have to be on a queue for 10 minutes waiting for someone to talk to, verify your information. Like Steve said, reduce that complexity, right? Make it the flow as efficient as possible. So those are ways that, hey, just use our product. We have a $100,000 guarantee, I guess, to start using it. And once you like it, hopefully you won't go back.
Yeah, great. Perfect. I'm going to move us on slightly now. And Mario and Oscar will probably give me a nudge when we need to begin to wrap up. But if you're with us, let us know if you have any further questions that you want me to pose to these guys. Just drop them in the chat. But I'm going to sort of move us towards the future thinking now. And my question is, what or who do you think might actually come in and disrupt this subscription recurring revenue model? What's happening? Like I know of things that are sort of ideas like bundling services together, or even some of the personalization opportunities out there. But what do you guys sort of see? Not necessarily worry you, but like, what do you think could happen to this model?
Eric, do you want to go first?
Sure. No, happy to. I think it's like every other industry where you have someone who you wouldn't think about looking at this space and saying, we can come in and we can figure out how to either make it part of our portfolio, or it's just another business line that's just so lucrative, right? So 2 examples, not from our space, but just to show you, right? So recently, TaxJar, which provides tax calculation for invoices, they were acquired by Stripe. Right? You wouldn't think that Stripe would want someone to help you with your taxes, but if you look at their overall mission, which is to help drive e-commerce, it very much is in their portfolio. It just seemed like, how does taxes and payment, right? You know, Microsoft acquiring LinkedIn. Microsoft, we make enterprise software. What are we doing with social networking, right? And so that's actually one thing where I think, you know, that could be. Now, the more likely scenario, because we're pretty specific, is you have adjacent companies come in. And so one of the threats I think both of us might be worried about is actually financial institutions wanting to get into this. Now, the great thing about that is maybe we'll be powering that service. I don't think they'll actually build subscription. I mean, they already have payment, but they won't necessarily compete in that sense, and we might be supplying them. But I think that that is a likely scenario where I have something like a financial institution come in.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I think for us, to paraphrase our founder, Hiroki, top of mind for GoCardless right now is open banking, right? And the concept that we are, you know, you can use the term API in any business unit right now, and people will understand it. I remember a time 10 years ago, showing my age, you'd walk into a room and API, we couldn't even spell it. But everyone now gets it. Lines of business get it, tech teams get it. And the ability and simplicity with which you can integrate into some of these financial institutions is coming. And you have companies out there who are laying, for want of a better term, the plumbing, the infrastructure to integrate. So they're building that kind of foundational piece. And then you have companies like us, GoCardless, coming along and actually building capability on top. And I think there's a bit of a race on, not to develop open banking, because open banking is just infrastructure. It's actually, what are you going to do from a capability perspective? And how quickly can you get to market? How can you demonstrate that you can do it securely and reliably? And what value are you adding to the chain? And I think there's a bit of a, especially in the UK, we're obviously seeing a steady rise quarter on quarter, and the amount of people that are now paying via open banking, that are activating the APIs. I think it's a very, very hot space. I think there's a couple of very interesting companies that are building some really, really interesting technology and are effectively facilitating a world where we move from bank to account to account.
Right.
And that's a big shift, because there is a world where you actually don't need to interface with the bank. You don't need to interface with the direct debit schemes, SEPA, BACS. You're basically going from merchant to Nick's account. And that's an interesting world.
Yeah, and I mean, the German market would be really, really used to that SEPA situation. You know, the majority of, you know, payments in that Central European region is is done by those bank-to-bank methods. So yeah.
Well, anecdotally, I don't know if it's a reflection of my boring LinkedIn posts, but I've been sharing content into the DACH market for quite some time, and I shared a LinkedIn post on open banking, and it probably 10x'd the views and reaction I got. So
oh, wow.
I say that as a self-reflection on my own boring content, but also on what we're seeing in the market. People are aware, And I've been very surprised, not in a condescending way, but when I walk into rooms and talk to CFOs, they're well versed on open banking. They can see the immediate application that it'll have in a recurring business model, and the friction that it will reduce in terms of fraud and failure. So there's a lot of educated individuals out there, and I think we need to be very specific on what we're solving for using it.
Yeah, cool. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, Eric, or I can. Cool.
No, we can move on. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that kind of makes me think of another question. I think it's along the lines of Jack's question here. The US market, the UK market, and the European market to a degree, although it's potentially more fragmented than those two markets by the nature of the number of countries, but they're well established. People know what subscriptions are. People are used to that now. Where do you see geographically those markets really opening up, and where are you guys thinking we need to provide either a payment service there or a billing service in that market, because actually that developing world, or whatever it might be, is going to be really ripe for the subscription model? Where are you seeing those places? What kind of countries? What's happening? I'll give that to Eric.
So today we have actually merchants in over 50 countries. They're obviously going to be very indexed towards the what I would call digitized economies, right? Where you have electronic payment, you have card and bank transfer kind of quite efficient. I think where the intersection could lie is if you could figure out, in some of these other countries where digital banking isn't happening, did they actually leapfrog and they use the mobile network as a proxy? But before I came back to enterprise software with Chargebee, I spent a long time in the telecom sector dealing with mobile content and mobile payments, right? And there was a time where I think that the likes of Vodafone and AT&T, Verizon, they all wanted to become kind of a payment facilitator, if not a mobile wallet, intermediary.
Yeah.
I think Apple and Google unfortunately have blunted that a lot. But in terms of, the licenses and in terms of their sheer capabilities, I think that that's still a huge opportunity for companies to look at, engaging with, the telecom companies as a way to facilitate payment, and then because of that enable subscription, because that's really the key, right? We can't have subscription without some way of facilitating the payment.
Yeah, cool. Stephen, anything to add on that?
I guess the stat that still blows my mind is 70% of invoices in North America are still paid by check. Right. So in terms of focus areas, our philosophy is, let's double down in the markets we're in. So we're obviously UK and Ireland, mainland Europe, Nordics, North America. But the natural next evolution, I think, is Asia, right? So there's a growing demand for subscription, annuity-based services. And I see a world where, it's there already, but for a company like us exploring and expanding into those markets. But I still think there's a lot of growing up to do in some of the established markets, right? If I was sent a check today, I wouldn't know what to do with it. And I think we probably have a lot of runway left in a lot of the digitized economies.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to fax you a check after this. See what you do with it, if I can find that fax machine.
Yeah.
But I think, and so Jack's question in the chat was, is there anything that that financial institutions might do to catch up? And I suppose summarize what you guys have been saying is. Like those financial institutions have historically just done the banking piece. They're not providing those differentiation services and products around billing, around actually taking payment, actually engaging customers. So yeah, I think they may have the cash and the customer base to catch up, but I don't think they know how to provide some of these things that you guys are doing. So yeah, I think it's interesting.
I could give an anecdotal example, and the financial institution will remain nameless, but we engaged with an international bank who offer direct debit. So GoCardless is primarily today built on the rails of direct debit and open banking. They run a direct debit service. They operate it. But architecturally, they're so inflexible, and they wanted to launch a new product that was leveraging direct debit for loan repayments. They evaluated it would take them 12 to 18 months in re-architecture, development cycle, et cetera, and they got up and running on GoCardless in 6 weeks. And that's not a plug for GoCardless. It's more a reflection of where these institutions are architecturally and from a focus perspective. They just don't have the incentive or the energy, I believe, to focus on building an API framework. And they're kind of opening up the APIs, but saying, you go build. So I actually think there's a really unique interface, because you're seeing large institutions kind of give that slice away and say, we're going to leave it to the more flexible, agile fintechs to go and build that capability. And that's what we're leveraging. So yeah, I don't know if that directly answers the question, but I just don't think they have the motivation right now.
No, I think it's good. I always say, especially in SaaS, there's no point having a small pie mentality. Actually, there's a lot of pie, and to provide your niche service, and you can collaborate and do that. Absolutely. Just to finish up before Oscar comes in, he's here. But any advice you guys would offer to any new fintech or subscription based company starting out? What should they do? What's the best way to think about getting this model in place?
Ease of acquisition. Make it super easy to get on your platform. Moneybox, look at all of them. Nutmeg, you can sign up in 2.5 minutes, right? Then you verify. They've just nailed simplicity. Trading 212, I could keep going, right? These are really innovative platforms that are making it the UI. They focus on UI and ease. And there's no lock-in. It's, if you want to exit platform, you can exit platform. You don't feel locked in. So yeah, just focus, double down on that ease. Ease and UI would be my 2 cents.
Mine would be, don't think about your subscription plans as a static model. Try to reevaluate them maybe every 6 to 12 months. Try to get enough data points so you can start really extracting the value and seeing how you can offer new plans, new products, new services as a way to continue to advance your subscriber base, but also increase the simplicity so that you can acquire new users faster.
Yeah, cool. So pricing optimization, switch up, and then looking at those new business models. So the SaaS plus business model, where else can you make some money? Cool. Yeah, I think we're done. I really want to thank you guys for contributing. Oscar, let me hand back to you.
I'm so sorry to jump in, because this was an excellent talk. I really enjoyed it, and this 1 hour went by so quickly, actually. So thank you guys so much. Just to wrap up today's session, Eric, Stephen, how can people reach out to you?
LinkedIn. I'll share my email. Phone. I'll get a fax machine. Nick, send me. Yeah, I think any of the above. So feel free to share all my details in the follow-up with the attendees.
Yeah, the same. LinkedIn or email would be great.
Yeah, that's great. So guys, thank you so much. And just one thing to wrap up today's session. Nick, I think the next London event, SaaStock Local London, is just around the corner, right?
It is. I've posted it in the chat. It's on the 15th of June. I'm doing a mini series on breakthrough, and we're getting some founders in, and they're going to say, what did they do to get breakthrough?
That's amazing. Really looking forward to it. And last but not least, guys, if you want to connect with us, you can join us on Clubhouse. We have a SaaS channel there. It's called Republic of SaaS. So feel free to drop in and just have a chat. And thanks for you guys in the chat room. It was great having you here. And take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks all.
Thanks all.
Thank
Bye,
you,
guys. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.